In this video, we're going to check out 10 gardening projects that have bins incorporated into them. And one thing that these builds all have in common is the fact that they're built with off-the-shelf electrical conduit and maker pipe clamps to assemble them. And something else they all have in common is the fact that there are bent pieces of EMT conduit within the projects. And if you're unfamiliar with these materials, like I said, you can get EMT conduit off the shelf at different hardware and home improvement stores, and the maker pipe clamps are sold online at makerpipe.com. And you can cut EMT conduit really easily, and you can also bend EMT conduit really easily using a handheld tool. And we have a full tutorial on the channel that I'll link down below on how to do small bends as well as large incremental bends. But in this video, I wanted to just highlight some projects and some creative ways that you can use bins in your gardening builds. So first of all, we've got this really awesome trellis that was shared by Gordon. And as we can see here, he's got some raised steel garden beds back here in this back garden area. And I love the use of bins in this one because he created these arches that extend from the garden beds and go all the way up and over and then secure to the side of his fence, as you can see here. And then he's got the trellis netting attached so that his plants can climb on there and go all the way up, which is really cool. And he even showed a picture of this bending tool that he has, and I think I know where he got this from. I'll link it down below if I can find it, so you can make bends really easily with that. That's really works really well for these large kind of incremental bends. And we also have a tutorial and calculator for large incremental bends as well, and so I'll try to link both of those down below for you. This is really cool. Love seeing this project. It looks fantastic and just a great use of bends in the build. So thanks so much, Gordon, for sharing this. We love seeing it. Next up is a really fascinating project. So Ben, he actually grows dragon fruits, and as you can see here, he has made a ton of these trellises for the dragon fruits, and the very top of these actually have some bins incorporated into them to be able to create this kind of oval at the very top. And these are just a really cool trellis that he's put together, and he's made a ton of them, as you can see here. And essentially, it's just two U-shaped bins that he's using really creatively with the maker pipe 180 degree connector to be able to attach the two halves together, and then he uses those at the very top of all of these trellises. Really cool and a really fascinating project, and I just love seeing all the different ideas and the different ways that he's using maker pipe and conduit, and just a really cool use of bending EMT in this. So really cool. Thanks so much, Ben, for sharing this. We love seeing it. Next up is a greenhouse that was put together by Frank, and this one has some bins incorporated into it. It actually has two kind of per roof, and this is a really great way to save money in your build. If you're going to be building a larger project that needs a lot of angles and corners, you could use connectors. So he could have used the maker pipe 45 degree connector there, and then another 45 degree connector at the top there. At least I think that's the two angles. Maybe not. But you could use different connectors to angle the roof accordingly based on whatever you want in your project. But if you're going to be doing a bunch of bends like this or a bunch of angles like this, then it's probably going to be easier and save you some money just to use a handheld pipe and tube bender. It's kind of an expensive tool, usually between $50 and $75, but that could be cheaper in the long run than buying, two connectors per bend or per angle that you would need in the project. So something to consider, but this is a really fantastic project that he shared, and just a really great use of bins to kind of save some money and create this really awesome looking greenhouse that is going to be really functional in the gardening season. So really cool. Thanks so much for sharing this. Next up is a mini hoop house, and this was shared by Jose, and this is really fantastic. This is obviously a smaller build, not like the giant greenhouses that we've seen, but this is a really great way to add some frost protection to your plants. And this one, of course, has the arches as well, but this is just a smaller scale build, and looks fantastic. And it looks like he used, or I think he said he used the maker pipe calculator for figuring out the dimensions for making these kind of incremental bends. And you can see there that it has kind of some flat edges, and that just kind of depends on how many bends that you want to make. You can kind of customize that using the calculator and figure out. But this is really fantastic, and it's really awesome to do this, because if you were going to make this a flat roof, then of course you run the risk of having rain or snow, whatever it might be, pulling up on top, and obviously you don't want that because then it could cause the plastic to fall apart or fall through, or the frame to fall apart. So to prevent that, you want to do an arched build, and we'll look at a few more like that, of course. But this is a really great way to incorporate bins and kind of prevent that from happening and still add protection for the plants. So really cool, Jose. Thanks for sharing this. Next up is a patio trellis that has some really slight bends in here, as we can see at the very top. And essentially this was just, I think just for aesthetics purposes, just to have, this kind of candy cane shape that goes down from the patio all the way up to the top. And then there's a 90-degree bend at the very top of it that then attaches to the side of this back patio with maker pipe flanges. And just a really simple thing to do. Like I said, it could be to save money, and it could just be for aesthetic purposes, lots of different reasons, but whatever it is, it does look fantastic, and it's just a really awesome way he used these to kind of add some space between the patio walls and where the trellis and cattle panels are, which is really cool and just a great use of materials. So really awesome. Thanks so much for sharing this, Matthew. Great build. Next up is a garden enclosure from Dale, and this is a really cool one. This looks kind of like the shape of a hoop house, but just a little bit larger than what we saw from Jose, and goes around both of these garden beds, and it's kind of a freestanding structure, and this is really cool. Love seeing this kind of a build, and something that's really good to keep in mind whenever you're doing a large-scale build like this that has a really large arch is you can break up the bins and kind of separate the halves and then join them back together with couplings, whether it be the electrical fittings you can get off the shelf or the maker pipe couplings, which I believe is what he's using up there to join these together. And that's a really great way to kind of keep from having to get the bins perfectly all the way around. You can kind of separate it into sections and then join those sections together. And you're kind of limited to the constraints of, when you get EMT conduit off the shelf, it's usually in 5 or 10 foot lengths. So if you want a certain dimension, you're probably going to have to use more than one piece anyway. So something to keep in mind. But this is a really fantastic build, and just love seeing this use of the arches and the bins in it. Just really cool. So thanks so much for sharing this. Next up is another greenhouse. This one comes from Mickey, and we did an interview with Mickey last year. He shared all kinds of fantastic details about this. This one kind of looks like a Hobbit house to me, and I think it's really cool. And this is, kind of I think he said he just kind of eyeballed it and just did random bins whenever he put this together, just to kind of create this shape. And he did the same thing where it's just several pieces that are joined together, which is a smart thing to do. And like I said, sometimes you have to, but this is a really fantastic greenhouse that he put together that has a really unique shape and plenty of space inside for his plants, and just a lot of great techniques and different things within this that you can check out in that interview. Or if you want to look at the photos, they'll be linked down below along with the rest of the builds. But just a really cool shape, and just a really fantastic use of conduit to get the greenhouse he was after, and kind of fits in his backyard and has these just really awesome bins in it. So really great. Thanks so much, Mickey, for sharing this. Next up is a build from Narav, and this is something that we see commonly. This is a box within garden, a raised garden bed to create trellis netting. But what's really unique about this one is Narav just added some really simple bins at the very top, and I imagine that this is for whenever he adds, frost proofing or different things to this, or like a sunshade, we'll say, he's like, you don't want the rain or the snow to pool on top. So by using these arches at the very top, he can, use that to kind of elevate and keep the material from, being flat on top of there. So if he does have any bad weather coming through, he doesn't have to worry about them, collapsing or kind of having those things pull up on top. So that's really cool, and just a nice and simple thing that he added with a few T-connectors, which is really great. So awesome job, Narav. Thanks so much for sharing this. Next up is a really fascinating one. This comes from Gary, and this was an Asian moon gate that he built to be an entryway into his garden. And this one is fantastic, just really cool, and a ton of bins in this, obviously, to make this giant circle. It's essentially 2 circles that are joined together and then spray painted black, and they're connected together with maker pipe T connectors, it looks like, to kind of create that space in between the front and back circle. But this is a really fantastic build, and something I'd never heard of before, but it's just meant to be a decorative kind of archway that you walk through whenever you go into his garden, as you can see here. And he did a fantastic job with this, and just a ton of bins in here. I imagine this took some work to get perfect, but it does look awesome, and just a really great piece in his garden. So really cool and a really creative project. Thanks so much for sharing these photos, Gary. Last but not least is a really beautiful trellis that Zach put together. And this is similar, like I said, where you have the box around the garden bed, but then this one also has arches. This is a little bit different. These are a bit higher, and these go up and over the frame, but these have cattle panels attached to them. So his plants that are growing up the trellis, or up the panels there, are kind of trellising and going all the way up, but then it just kind of arches over. So he's able to, kind of connect both sides of where the plants are growing, and they have trellising that they can climb all the way over. So I bet this looks fantastic with all the plants growing on top of it and, fully grown. So this is just really cool and a great use of bins. And I think this is similar to what we were talking about, where you have to, kind of separate it. And I can see a few different couplings. Actually, I think there's one down there. There's a coupling. and I think one down there. So he kind of split this up so he can get the dimensions he was after, which, like I said, is a really great way to achieve bends and not have to get them perfect every time. But this looks fantastic and just a really great use of bending EMT in a project. It's really cool, Zach. Thanks so much for sharing this, and thanks to everybody for posting your builds. As always, we love seeing them, and these will all be linked down below if you want to check them out in more detail. Be sure to check out those tutorials that I talked about in the description if you want to add bends into your project. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.